Hello and welcome to episode 066 of the Bit Beacon broadcast. It's December 20th, 2024. I'm recording this a bit earlier than I usually do because I am going to be away next week, and I thought about not doing an episode at all, but it just didn't sit right with me. So I put together a quick little present for you all. I'm hoping this will be a short and sweet episode. Editing is going to be at a minimum. I apologize if you hear my lips smacking and ums and ahs, more than usual at least. So let's jump into a purchase I've made. This isn't something that's actually arrived and I've received, but I thought it was pretty notable. So I wanted to talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake for PlayStation 5. So originally Final Fantasy VII Remake released on PS4 back in 2020, right as the pandemic was hitting. And a year later, they released a PS5 version of the game. And this PS5 version of the game had a very small, limited retail release. We didn't know it was going to be a small release, but they did not make very many copies of it. And this PS5 version also came packed in with a code for a DLC expansion that added more story to the game. And so this, about a year or so after the PS5 version released, it became very valuable and very expensive. Now fast forward 3 years later, Square Enix is finally reprinting the game, meaning they're putting out new copies. And about a week ago, Amazon had stock for all of 2 or 3 minutes of this reprint, and they were selling it for $49.99, which is pretty good considering the original PS5 version was I think $70. Now the reason why they probably didn't print so many was because when they first released the PS5 version, it became a free upgrade for anyone who owned the PS4 version already. So it kind of there didn't seem to be a big demand for it because most people had bought it physically the year before, the hardcore collectors, and they're like, oh cool, I get a bonus PlayStation 5 version just with my PS4 disc. So it didn't really seem to make a lot of sense to drop $70. But, Final Fantasy, especially Final Fantasy VII, physical stuff for these games, for Square Enix games, often can become rare and valuable over time. Not as much in recent years. Square Enix has actually been pretty good about reprinting, but for some reason they really took their sweet time on this one. So last week, after Amazon had stock, a couple of Canadian retailers put up their stock, Video Games Plus and PNP Games. So they are now available to pre-order at both of those retailers, and I think it's only about $43 US if you order from them. So a pretty great deal. No sales tax too, since they're in Canada, if you're here in the US. So yeah, I pre-ordered that as soon as it came up in stock at Video Games Plus, and I was really happy to finally kind of knock that one off my list. It's been one of those ones that kind of escaped me and was really bothering me that I didn't have in my collection. So I believe this reprint is expected to ship sometime in February or March. So if you've been looking for this one and don't want to pay those crazy scalper prices that are $170, $200, which is just absolutely insane, you can pick one up. Hopefully soon on even more retailers here in the US. If you're, not wanting to buy from a Canadian retailer, you can expect to possibly get your hands on a copy via Best Buy, Target, GameStop pretty soon. Now, one thing to note about this is that when it first released in 2021, GameStop sold it, and they sold it with a pre-order bonus, which is an exclusive steelbook. And that exclusive steelbook goes for hundreds of dollars. It's crazy. That steelbook will probably not be coming back. So just keep in mind that if you're a collector, you're probably still going to be missing that one unless you jumped on it back when it first came out. Okay, so I have been playing. Still haven't had time to really sit down and sink my teeth back into Dragon Quest. That's a game where I need to have at least 2 or 3 hours of uninterrupted time to play the game for me to really want to get down there and enjoy it. So I just haven't found that time quite yet. Zenless Zone Zero did have a big update this past week. They gave out a free 5-star limited character to everyone who's playing, and a bunch of polling currency to try to get one of the other limited characters. They had a big character this week, Hoshina Miyabi, launch, and people are going kind of crazy for this character because she is extremely powerful and just kind of destroys all the content in the game. So I did manage to pull that character thanks to some of the free currency they gave away. And I'm currently in the process of building the character up because my account is basically at a higher play level that I can't really use a basic new character that I just acquired until I've really beefed up their equipment and their skills. And unfortunately, this is a game where it kind of takes a few weeks before you can get them in a kind of playable state. For at least for me personally, I didn't do any pre-farming for their equipment or gear or anything like that. I just kind of pulled unexpectedly. I wasn't convinced I was going to do it beforehand. And of course, my account's still fairly new, so my resources are pretty limited in that game. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that character up to speed. I did play through the new story content, which I did enjoy quite a bit. It seemed kind of like a wrapping up of the current arc of the story of the game. This new patch 1.4 was basically touted as sort of a soft relaunch of the whole game. They streamlined a bunch of things. They kind of altered some of the early game content to make it more new player friendly. And I don't know, I think it's pretty good. They made some changes to the combat as well. Previously, you had an ultimate meter, but only all 3 characters in your party would share that ultimate meter, so you couldn't use their ultimate ability independently of each other. If one character used it, it drained the ultimate meter for all 3 of your characters. Now each character has their own independent ultimate meter, so it has made combat a little more flashy, fun, and exciting. Not that it wasn't beforehand, but it's even more so now. So that's a pretty cool change. I think that's definitely a boon to the game. Alright, now it's time to open up a booster pack. Finally, Pokemon TCG Pocket launched a new booster pack, and I guess it's considered a subset of sorts, but it's called Mythical Island. There's only one booster pack art, so you don't have to choose between 3 like you normally do with the base set, I guess. And so it's got Mew on the cover. Mew's kind of the really heavily featured card of the set. I think there's like 3 or 4 different Mew cards in the set. There's only like 60 some cards in the set, and I already have 40 some of them. Obviously, most of those are like the basic uncommon cards. I'm kind of expecting that we won't pull anything new right now, but let's give it a shot. Alright, it's loading. We're just going to go with this booster pack. Let's see. Alright, yeah, as I predicted, I don't see any hollows here when I'm peeking on the side. But maybe I'll get at least one new common card. A really nice Geodude, a Morlul, an Eevee, and a Scolipede. Unfortunately, none of them new cards, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. When this set first launched, maybe 3 nights ago, I opened 10 booster packs in a row. I used a bunch of my hourglass items to open 10 at once, and it's cool. It literally like slices them all open simultaneously, and then you just get this big stack of cards. And unfortunately, I didn't get a single holographic card and 10 booster packs. I don't know if this set is just really light on holographic cards, or they're just being stingier with the rates of pulling them, or what. But yeah, this set's kind of been a disappointment to pull from so far. Not seeing a whole lot of exciting stuff in it. There are some cool cards that I have seen, but nowhere to be seen in my account, at least not yet. Alright, so I've got 2 short stories. Well, one new story. One story is an update on a previous story. So let's jump into these first ones. I think we're going to be wrapping up this pod real quick this week. Bear with me. I promise it won't be so short the next one. Although I don't know if I am gonna... It's gonna be tough because I'm usually working on the episode, finding the stories, kind of working on the script, give you a little behind the scenes over the course of the previous week. And because I'm gonna be on vacation and away from home, I don't really know if I'll be able to put together something in time for the following week. If I do an episode the week of New Year's, it might be a little later than normal, or there might not be one at all. So apologies if I don't get one out to you all in time. Okay, but we're gonna talk our first story here. So where do games get the millions of dollars they need to pay the bills while developing the game? Many games have traditional publishers who fund and develop games with money from the previous game sales, and the cycle just kind of continues like that. But other games, especially more recently, have been finding a different path with investors. Enter Vgames. Vgames describes itself as the venture fund for game entrepreneurs, which is kind of an interesting way. So not for game developers, but for game entrepreneurs, which kind of tells me that, like, hey, we're not looking for people who are passionate about making games. We're looking for people who are passionate about making a lot of money making games. But I don't know, let's continue the story and see how that goes. So Vgames is based in Israel and founded in 2020. They have since raised more than $340 million US, including its latest round of funding of $142 million. That's why I'm talking about them, because they just announced their third round of funding secured $142 million US. Vgames seeks out studios and developers working primarily on mobile and free-to-play games, and invest in them to help get their games off the ground, in return for profits from those games after launch. While looking over their portfolio of studios they have invested in, I didn't recognize a single one of them. And that's because it's mostly a bunch of predatory mobile games that our parents and grandparents are playing, like Dice Dreams and Word Farm, whatever that is. While I'm not a fan of those products, I'm sure they have their fans, just like how I enjoy games from Hoyoverse like Zenless Zone Zero and Genshin Impact. I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, look at those games as being potentially predatory. And they are, and they can be, in the wrong hands. Someone could, mistakenly spend way too much money on them. Not even mistakenly, sometimes intentionally, but not realizing, they just spent $500 to get their waifu, and instead, now they can't pay their rent anymore and they're going to get evicted, So predatory games are bad. I don't know why I have like an extra prejudice against the mobile variety. Probably because not only are they predatory, but they're riddled with ads and they make you watch ads to continue playing. It's just like ridiculous. I don't know. Every time I download like some random game I see in the store, I'm almost always disappointed at just how poor the whole thing is. But one thing I do enjoy about Vgames is how they outright refuse to work on blockchain games. Founder, and I'm probably pronouncing his name incorrectly, founder Eaton Rysel says the following about blockchain games. You won't see any big crypto names on our list. We're very disciplined on content creation. I think it's not technology. It's more type of content you're playing. We always want to invest in games that we believe can attract a mass market. So while he's got one shoe out of his mouth with the crypto stuff, he puts the other one in when he's talking about like, hey, we're only interested in things that will make us a bunch of money. We don't think crypto's going to do that, so we're not interested in it. He's not even interested in the games. It's not about the games. It's about the money. Is this project going to milk a bunch of money out of people? That's all he cares about. You know what? I regret even giving these guys a little bit of coverage. Let's pretend I never even talked about them. So a few weeks ago, we were talking about Sony potentially acquiring Japanese mega publisher and holding company Kadokawa. Well, the details have finally been ironed out, and it looks like an acquisition was not in the cards for Sony, at least at this time. Instead, Sony and Kadokawa have formed a strategic capital and business alliance. So what does this mean? Well, for starters, Sony purchased 12,054,100 new shares of Kadokawa for approximately $317.5 million US dollars. This increases Sony's stake in the company to 10%, which now makes them Kadokawa's largest shareholder. Sony says that they and Kadokawa have been partners in the past, and this new business alliance will further strengthen our collaboration to maximize both companies' intellectual property value globally and facilitate wider and deeper collaboration, such as potential joint investments in the content field, joint discovery of new creators, and joint promotion of further media mixes of both companies' intellectual property. Okay, it's kind of a mouthful. Kadokawa's CEO said the following in the press release about the strategic business alliance. He said, "We are very pleased to conclude this capital and business alliance agreement with Sony. This alliance is expected to not only further strengthen our IP creation capabilities, but also increase our IP media mix options with Sony's support for global expansion, allowing us to deliver our IP to more users around the world. We are confident that this will greatly contribute to maximizing the value of our IP and increasing our corporate value in the mid to long term. We intend to do our utmost to ensure that our collaborative efforts with Sony produce great results in the global market." Okay, so again, kind of reiterating what Sony was sort of saying, hey, this is an alliance. This is not an acquisition. We're going to leverage each other's strengths and push our content to more people around the world using the individual tools that we have. Sony has stuff like Crunchyroll, which is a big anime streaming service here in the West, and Kadokawa, they are in anime and manga and things like that. So it might be that they can leverage Sony's, publishing stuff to get their things out to more places in the world. So Sony CEO Hiroki Totoki, who we've talked about before, said the following: "Through this capital and business alliance, we will become the largest shareholder of Kadokawa, which consistently creates a wide variety of IP, including publications and books such as light novels and comics, as well as games and anime. By combining Kadokawa's extensive IP and IP creation ecosystem with the strengths of Sony, which has promoted the global expansion of a wide range of entertainment, including anime and games, we plan to closely work together to realize Kadokawa's global media mix strategy, aimed at maximizing the value of its IP, and Sony's long-term vision, creative entertainment vision." So I guess that's just some internal corporate jargon that they have. So what does this mean for gaming? Well, for starters, I can tell you what it doesn't mean. It means that people who were concerned that Sony would become owners of From Software, the makers of Elden Ring, and the Souls games, which Kadokawa owns, they don't need to worry about that anymore. Perhaps it could get to a point now where Bandai Namco would no longer be publishing their games, and instead Sony, but the games themselves would likely remain multi-platform. I've seen some speculation that this is just the beginning of a slow Sony takeover, or perhaps it's just meant to fend off potential foreign investors from China and elsewhere. It'll be interesting to see what happens with their plans to collaborate jointly on promoting each other's intellectual property in mixed media kinds of ways, but these efforts and campaigns will likely take many months, if not more than a year, to enact. Okay, that's it. That's the show. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. See you in the new year. End transmission.